We have an opportunity to connect to Congress today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rich Pierce. I'm joined today by Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown. We're going to be speaking about a wide array of topics. Senator Brown, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you again. Thank you.
Well, first I want to ask you about the Retired Minor and Benefit Act. Exactly what would the passage of an act like that mean for retired minors and also current minors?
Well, there are significantly fewer working minors now, unfortunately, than there are retirees. And while the pension fund was done right for many, many years, what happened to the economy in 2007 and 2008 has caused a shortfall in the pension fund. That's why this week Senator Manchin and Senator Capito and I joined together to introduce the Minors Protection Act, taking money from the Abandoned Mine Fund and using that to make sure that the obligations are met for pensions for minors who earned them. I mean, these are men, and mostly men, and some women who worked hard all their lives and deserve these benefits, deserve a full pension that they were promised. And we want to make sure that we can live up to that promise so that minors are protected.
Now, we're going to be jumping around significantly here. Now I'm going to ask you about marijuana legalization. There is a push in the state of Ohio to have marijuana legalized. Where do you stand on the issue, and is this a decision states should be making, or should the federal government be stepping in?
Well, it probably should be a national decision, not a state by state, because of the problems. I support medicinal marijuana. I think that it's proven to be a benefit to people suffering from cancer and other kinds of illnesses, that medicinal marijuana can do some good things for them. I have concerns. I don't think that questions have been asked and answered yet on what legalization would mean in my state of Ohio. And I want to see what's happening in Colorado, where it's legal, before we make this Ohio decision that's going to affect law enforcement and affect young people. I want to make sure that kids are protected especially. So before we move forward, these questions need to be answered to people's satisfaction in my state.
Now, the oil and gas industry has been well documented, its boom in our area here, and one of the consequences, maybe unintended consequences, is some roads have been, well, put in some pretty poor shape now because of all that traffic. Is there any chance and anything on the federal level that you can see happening to maybe help those roads, or even put in a highway maybe between Columbus and Harrison County, where that gas boom is so big?
Well, unfortunately in Ohio, we've had a state legislature that's just abandoned Appalachia and eastern and southern Ohio. They spend very little out of Columbus for infrastructure. They clearly have shown they'd rather give tax cuts to wealthy people than helping middle class and working class people get ahead with schools and highways and all. The federal government has dropped the ball too. Clearly, when a bunch of Republicans signed a pledge that they would never close tax loopholes, and also that they continue giving tax cuts to the rich instead of doing a long-term transportation bill that provides jobs. So we have a lot of work to do here, and we've got to rebuild this nation's infrastructure. We used to have the best infrastructure in the world handed to us by our parents and grandparents, and we haven't even maintained it well, and it's shameful.
Now I want to ask you about a big international issue, of course, the Greek financial crisis. And should citizens in the United States be worried about this? Could it affect us here at home?
Well, I think we should be concerned about it. We saw some of these same things play out. When banks lend money and take risks that are too great, and then the people that they lend to aren't paying them back, government shouldn't be there to bail out the banks. I mean, banks went into these situations in Greece as they went into situations in Ohio and around our country with eyes wide open. Then when the people they lend money to fail, it's the banks took the risk, but they want to shift the risk to taxpayers. So I think we're seeing some of those same things played out internationally that we saw play out with such devastation in our state. The zip code that I live in Cleveland, Ohio, had the highest rate of foreclosure of any zip code in America 8 or 9 years ago. And I know the devastation that foreclosures and bank bailouts do to our state, and I don't want to see that sort of contagion spread to our country again, which was so terrible half a decade ago.
Now, there's been some speculation that if Greece goes forward here, perhaps leaves the Eurozone, Russia could end up jumping in. And what are the dangers of Russia getting more involved in this?
I don't see Russia as imminently a problem with Greece right now. I see the European Central Bank. I see Germany. I see France not stepping up the way they should, and I see Greece having to step up more than it has. How this plays out is anybody's guess, but they all have to get more serious about it, including the Premier of Germany and President Hollande of France. I don't think they've served Europe well in their response here, and I don't think Greek leaders in the past have either. But I've also seen what these large banks have done in many ways to the Greek people. In a way that I think is simply not fair, in spite of the fact that they have not always been as responsible as they should have, the Greek government and some number of people in Greece. But the banks have had, frankly, too much control on too many of these issues.
Senator Brown, we're just a few weeks removed.
I got to wrap it up. Can I do one more question? Is that?
Sure, Senator Brown. I do have one more question for you. We're just a few weeks removed now from the shootings in Charleston. 9 people tragically killed, and that's re-sparked that debate over gun control. The president, of course, has been very vocal about gun control. And what more should the federal government be doing to curb violence like this, especially gun violence?
Well, a couple of things obviously in South Carolina with the flag is a part of that. I supported Senator Manchin's co-sponsored with Senator Toomey of Pennsylvania, their background checks bill. I think that's something that could matter in dealing with some of the gun violence. We need to do other things too, with mental health treatment, with looking at other gun safety legislation. Clearly our society is too violent. Clearly too many people die at the hand of guns in our country, and we have a problem that's much greater than just guns, but it is clearly a problem that has brought too much hardship and too much heartache to far too many families in Ohio and West Virginia and Pennsylvania.